What do you call it when the entertainment industry tells a talented black woman that her skin is the wrong shade of beautiful? When casting directors look at her resume, see her acting training, witness her undeniable talent, but ultimately shake their heads and say, "You're just too dark for television"? You call it Tuesday in Hollywood. You call it the reason why, according to the Geena Davis Institute, only 19% of black leading ladies in major films have dark skin, while 81% are light or medium toned. You call it the brutal reality that has shaped the careers of countless dark-skinned black women who possessed every qualification for success, except the one thing they could never change: the melanin in their skin. But what happens when one of those women refuses to accept that verdict? What happens when she decides that if the industry won't create space for her, she create her own space? What happens when talent, determination, and an unshakable belief in her own worth collides with an entertainment system built on colorist assumptions? Meet Amara Williams, a name that network executives now know very well, though 10 years ago they wouldn't take meetings with her. The same woman who was told her skin was too dark for mainstream television just signed a $50 million deal, making her the highest paid black actress in television history. The same face that agents said would limit audience appeal now graces billboards across the country, representing a show that has become the network's most watched series in a decade. This is more than a success story. It's a reckoning with an industry that has spent generations equating lighter skin with broader appeal, commercial viability, and star quality. It's about the intersection of racism and colorism that creates unique barriers for dark-skinned black women. Most importantly, it's about what happens when someone with enough talent, courage, and strategic intelligence decides to change the entire game rather than accept the rules that were designed to exclude her. Amara Williams grew up in Atlanta during the 1990s in a middle-class household where her mother, Dr. Denise Williams, was a pediatrician, and her father, Marcus Williams, was a high school principal. But despite their professional success, the Williams family couldn't shield their daughter from the colorist attitudes that pervaded even their own community. Amara's skin tone, a rich, deep chocolate brown that seemed to absorb and reflect light. In equal measure made, her stand out in a city where social hierarchies often reflected the old paper bag test, mentalities that had divided black communities for generations. At family gatherings, she endured comments from relatives about staying out of the sun. At her predominantly black private school, she watched lighter-skinned classmates receive more attention from teachers and peers. Even within her own family, she noticed how differently she was treated compared to her lighter-skinned cousin, Maya, who seemed to glide through social situations that left Amara feeling self-conscious and excluded. The entertainment industry's colorism wasn't abstract. To young Amara, it was visible every time she turned on the television. The black actresses she saw in leading roles looked nothing like her. They were beautiful, talented, and successful, but they all shared one characteristic: lighter skin. They fit into Hollywood's narrow definition of acceptable blackness. From Halle Berry to Thandie Newton, from Alicia Keys to early career Beyoncé, the message was clear. Darker skin meant supporting roles, background characters, or no roles at all. But Amara had been performing since childhood, participating in church, plays, school productions, and community theater. Her talent was undeniable. She could make audiences laugh, cry, and feel deeply connected to whatever character she portrayed. Her high school drama teacher, Mrs. Patricia Johnson, was the first adult to see past Amara's skin color to her extraordinary abilities. "You have something special," Mrs. Johnson told 15-year-old Amara after a particularly powerful performance in their school's production of A Raisin in the Sun. "But I need to prepare you for what you're going to face out there. This industry is going to try to limit you, to put you in boxes based on how you look rather than what you can do. Your job is to be so good that they can't ignore you. Those words became Amara's mission statement as she pursued a BFA in acting from Spelman College, followed by an MFA from Yale School of Drama. At both institutions, she excelled academically and artistically, but she also encountered the subtle and not so subtle ways that colorism operated in theatrical spaces. Directors consistently cast her in roles as servants, struggling single mothers, or tragic figures, while her lighter-skinned classmates were considered for romantic leads, professionals, and complex characters that showcased range and depth. 2010s brought unprecedented conversations about diversity in Hollywood, sparked by movements like #OscarsSoWhite and the commercial success of shows like Empire and Black-ish. But even as the entertainment industry began acknowledging its lack of black representation, the gains were largely concentrated among lighter-skinned performers. Kerry Washington's success in Scandal was groundbreaking, but she was light-skinned. Viola Davis's historic Emmy win for How to Get Away with Murder was significant, but industry insiders quietly noted that she was an exception rather than a trend. For actresses like Amara, this period was particularly frustrating. The industry was talking about black representation while still maintaining colorist casting practices that excluded the darkest members of the black community. She watched as opportunities went to mixed-race and lighter-skinned actresses, while dark-skinned women remained largely invisible in leading roles. The psychological impact was devastating. Despite her training, her talent, and her determination, Amara began to internalize the message that her skin color made her commercially unviable. She considered using skin-lightening products, a decision that horrified her family, but reflected the impossible choices that colorism forces upon its victims. By 2015, after 5 years of rejections, near misses, and casting directors who praised her talent while explaining that she wasn't what they were looking for, Amara was ready to quit acting entirely. She had been told directly by 3 different agents that her dark skin would limit her to very specific roles and that she should consider other career paths. The woman who had been the star of every production from elementary school through graduate school was being told by the YATSU, professional entertainment industry, that she simply didn't belong. What happened next would change not just Amara's life, but the entire landscape of television representation for dark-skinned black women. The breaking point came during a pilot season audition in March 2015 for what seemed like the perfect opportunity. The show, called City Stories, was being pitched as a groundbreaking drama about successful black women navigating careers, relationships, and family in contemporary Atlanta. The lead character, Zoe, was described as a brilliant attorney who returns to her hometown to start her own practice while dealing with family secrets and romantic complications. Amara had prepared for weeks. She knew this character intimately. The script could have been written about women she knew, situations she had witnessed, emotions she had experienced. Her audition was flawless. She embodied Zoe's intelligence, vulnerability, and strength in ways that made the character feel real and compelling. When she finished her scene, the room was silent in a way that usually indicates a powerful performance. Then casting director Jennifer Morrison, a white woman in her 50s who had cast dozens of successful television shows, spoke the words that would haunt Amara for years. "That was absolutely beautiful, Amara. You're incredibly talented. But I have to be honest with you. You're just too dark for this role." The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Amara felt her breath catch, her heart rate accelerate, and the familiar burning sensation behind her eyes that signaled tears she refused to shed in public. "I'm sorry?" Amara managed, hoping she had misunderstood. Morrison's expression shifted to something resembling pity, as if she were delivering unfortunate but necessary news. "This show is going to air in prime time on a major network. We need someone who can appeal to the broadest possible audience." The character of Zoe needs to be someone that viewers can relate to, someone they can see themselves in. And unfortunately, research shows that darker-skinned actresses have more limited audience appeal. The executive producer, David Chun, nodded in agreement. It's not personal, Amara. It's just business. Television is about advertising revenue, and advertisers want to reach the largest possible audience. We have to cast based on commercial viability. What followed was perhaps the most insulting part of the entire exchange. Morrison pulled out headshots of 3 actresses, all light-skinned or biracial women, and spread them across the table. Now, these are the looks we're considering for Zoe. See how much more versatile they are? They can appeal to black audiences because they're technically black, but they're also palatable to white audiences because they're not too intense. The word intense was clearly a euphemism for dark, and Amara understood that her very existence, her skin color, her features, her undeniable blackness was being characterized as something threatening, something that needed to be diluted or avoided entirely. What if I lightened my makeup? Amara found herself asking, a question that made her feel sick even as the words left her mouth. What if we found ways to make me more palatable? The suggestion was met with uncomfortable shifting and sideways glances. Morrison's assistant, a young black woman who had remained silent throughout the exchange, looked down at her notes with an expression of visible discomfort. Honey, Morrison said, her tone becoming even more condescending, this isn't about makeup or lighting. This is about casting decisions that will determine whether this show gets picked up for a full season. The network wants someone who can carry a show to broad mainstream success. And unfortunately, dark-skinned actresses haven't proven they can do that in leading roles. As evidence, Chung pulled up statistics on his laptop showing audience research data that purported to demonstrate limited audience identification with darker-skinned performers. The data was presented as objective truth rather than the reflection of industry biases that created self-fulfilling prophecies. If networks consistently cast light-skinned actresses in leading roles, of course audiences would become accustomed to seeing only those faces in positions of authority and romantic desirability. The meeting ended with Morrison offering Amara an audition for a different role, the lead character's best friend, described as supportive, wise, and loyal. It was a classic magical Negro archetype, designed to provide guidance and comic relief to the lighter-skinned protagonist, while having no independent storyline or character development. Walking out of that audition, Amara felt something break inside her that had been cracking for years. Not just disappointment or frustration, but a fundamental questioning of her worth and place in an industry that had shaped her dreams since childhood. She sat in her car in the parking garage for 30 minutes, crying in a way she hadn't since. She was a child deep, body-shaking sobs that released years of accumulated rejection and internalized shame. But as the tears subsided, something else emerged: rage. Pure, focused anger at an industry that had the audacity to tell her she was too talented to be ignored, but too dark to be successful. Anger at a system that would rather perpetuate colorist beauty standards than challenge audiences to see dark-skinned black women as complex, desirable, and worthy of leading roles. That evening, Amara made a decision that would change her career trajectory entirely. Instead of accepting the supporting role, instead of lightening her skin, instead of trying to make herself more palatable to an industry that saw her as commercially unviable, she decided to create her own content. If television wouldn't make space for actresses who looked like her, she would build her own platform. She called her cousin Maya, who worked in digital marketing, and her college roommate, Kaisha, who had become a successful writer and producer. I want to create a web series, she told them. Something that centers dark-skinned black women in complex, leading roles. Something that shows we can carry stories, that audiences will connect with us, that we're not just supporting characters in other people's narratives. The series they would create, Melanin Diaries, would start as a low-budget web production filmed in Amara's Atlanta apartment. But within 2 years, it would become a viral phenomenon, attracting millions of viewers and ultimately catching the attention of the same network executives who had once dismissed Amara as too dark for television. The woman they had rejected as commercially unviable was about to prove exactly how wrong they were, and in doing so, she would change the entire landscape of television representation for dark-skinned black women across the industry. Melanin Diaries, with a budget of $3,000 and equipment borrowed from friends, was the easy part compared to what followed. Amara and her small team faced obstacles that went far beyond the typical challenges of independent content creation. They were fighting against decades of industry conditioning that told audiences, advertisers, and decision-makers that dark-skinned black women couldn't be commercially successful leads. The first season of Melanin Diaries launched on YouTube in September 2015, featuring Amara as Kaisha, a successful marketing executive navigating corporate microaggressions, family expectations, and romantic relationships. The show deliberately centered experiences that were rarely depicted on mainstream television. The specific ways colorism affected dark-skinned women's dating lives, the professional challenges of being simultaneously overlooked and hyper-scrutinized, and the complex family dynamics where lighter-skinned relatives sometimes received preferential treatment. Initial response was mixed in ways that reflected the deep-seated biases Amara was challenging. While many dark-skinned black women found the series revolutionary, finally seeing their experiences reflected with nuance and complexity, some viewers criticized the show for being too focused on color or divisive within the black community. More challenging was the response from industry professionals who had power to amplify the series. Talent agents who had previously rejected Amara now expressed interest but wanted to broaden the show's appeal by adding lighter-skinned characters or downplaying colorism themes. Potential investors questioned whether audiences would connect with a protagonist who was too specifically black, rather than someone who could cross over to mainstream audiences. The criticism was particularly painful when it came from within the black entertainment community. Established black producers and directors, many of whom were lighter-skinned themselves, suggested that Amara was limiting her own opportunities by creating content that was too confrontational about colorism. Some accused her of creating unnecessary division within black communities by highlighting intraracial discrimination. "You're making all of us look bad," one prominent black television producer told Amara at a networking event. "We finally made progress getting black shows on television, and now you want to create problems by talking about colorism. You're going to make networks think twice about working with any of us." But the response from dark-skinned black women was overwhelmingly different. Letters poured in from viewers who had never seen themselves represented in complex leading roles. Young black girls wrote about seeing someone who looked like them portrayed as intelligent, desirable, and worthy of love and success. Adult women shared stories about how the show had helped them process their own experiences with colorism in dating, workplace discrimination, and family dynamics. Most significantly, the series began attracting viewers beyond its target demographic. White viewers, Asian viewers, and Latino viewers found themselves drawn to storylines about workplace discrimination, family expectations, and personal growth that resonated across racial lines. The show's authenticity and Amara's compelling performance created the kind of genuine audience connection that couldn't be manufactured through focus groups or market research. By the end of the first season, Melanin Diaries had accumulated over 5 million views and generated coverage in major entertainment publications. Variety called it a groundbreaking exploration of colorism that challenges television's narrow beauty standards. The Hollywood Reporter praised Amara's magnetic screen presence and authentic writing that fills a crucial gap in television representation. But success brought new challenges. Streaming platforms and networks began reaching out with offers to acquire the series, but their proposed changes revealed that they still didn't understand what made the show successful. Netflix wanted to recast the lead with a more universally appealing actress. Hulu suggested balancing the colorism themes with more relatable relationship storylines. Traditional networks proposed moving the series to late-night slots, where niche content typically aired. Each offer forced Amara to choose between broader distribution and creative integrity. The temptation to compromise was enormous. These deals would provide financial security, professional legitimacy, and access to resources that could expand the show's reach. But accepting them would also mean betraying the very principles that had motivated her to create the series. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Chun, a media researcher at USC, had been studying audience engagement with Melanin Diaries and discovered something that contradicted conventional industry wisdom. Dark-skinned viewers showed significantly higher engagement rates than any other demographic. They watched more episodes, re-watched content more frequently, and were more likely to recommend the show to others. More importantly, Dr. Chun's research revealed that audience relatability wasn't actually diminished by Amara's dark skin. Instead, viewers connected with the character's intelligence, humor, and vulnerability, qualities that transcended physical appearance. When writing and performance were strong enough to create genuine emotional connections. Armed with this research, Amara began approaching networks with a different strategy. Instead of accepting their premise that her skin color was a commercial liability, she presented data proving that authentic representation created more loyal, engaged audiences than the diluted content that resulted from colorist casting practices. The strategy required enormous personal resilience. Amara was simultaneously creating content, performing in it, producing it, and advocating for an entirely new approach to television representation. She was working 18-hour days while facing constant rejection and criticism from an industry that saw her as both too radical and not commercial enough. The psychological toll was severe. Despite the show's success and growing fan base, Amara struggled with imposter syndrome, anxiety about whether she was good enough to justify the risks she was taking, and depression from years of fighting against systemic barriers that seemed designed to exclude her. But she also drew strength from the community that had emerged around Melanin Diaries. Dark-skinned Black actresses from across the country began reaching out, sharing their own stories of rejection and expressing gratitude for content that made them feel seen and valued. The series became more than entertainment. It became a form of activism that challenged industry assumptions while providing representation that had been missing from television for generations. By 2017, Melanin Diaries had been renewed for 3 seasons and was generating enough advertising revenue to pay its cast and crew professional salaries. Amara Williams was no longer an aspiring actress. She was a successful writer, producer, and performer who had proven that dark-skinned Black women could carry commercially successful content when given the opportunity. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning in January 2018. Amara was in her home office, writing scripts for the 4th season of Melanin Diaries, when her assistant, Jasmine, knocked on the door with unusual urgency. "You need to take this call," Jasmine said, her voice carrying a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "It's Catherine Morrison from Prime Network." Catherine Morrison was not just any network executive. She was the newly appointed head of original programming at Prime Network, one of the 3 major broadcast networks, and she had a reputation for making bold decisions that changed industry trends. More importantly, she was calling about something unprecedented. "Amara," Morrison said, her voice professional but carrying an undertone of excitement. I've been watching Melanin Diaries for the past 6 months, and I think we need to have a conversation. I want to offer you something that's never been offered to a dark-skinned black actress before. The proposition was audacious. Prime Network wanted to adapt Melanin Diaries for broadcast television, with a budget 20 times larger than the web series, a primetime slot, and most importantly, Amara as both the star and executive producer. The proposed deal would make her the first dark-skinned black actress to lead a major network drama and one of the highest-paid black performers in television history. But the offer came with a catch that revealed how much the industry still didn't understand its own biases. "We love the show," Morrison continued, "but we need to make some adjustments for broadcast television. We're thinking we could lighten the colorism themes, maybe add some lighter-skinned characters to balance the cast, and perhaps adjust your look slightly better lighting, different makeup, to make you more appealing to mainstream audiences." The suggestions were delivered as standard industry practice, reasonable accommodations for the realities of broadcast television. But to Amara, they represented everything she had been fighting against, the assumption that her authentic self wasn't commercially viable. That success required diluting the very elements that made her work meaningful. "I appreciate the offer," Amara responded, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "But I think you're misunderstanding what makes the show successful. The audience doesn't connect with Melanin Diaries, despite the colorism themes in my dark skin. They connect because of them. You're asking me to remove the elements that make the show authentic and revolutionary." What followed was a negotiation that lasted 3 months and challenged every assumption Prime Network held about audience appeal and commercial viability. Amara's position was non-negotiable. She would not lighten her skin, would not minimize colorism themes, and would not accept a supporting role in her own story. If Prime Network wanted Melanin Diaries, they would have to trust that audiences were ready for authentic representation of dark-skinned black women. The turning point came when Dr. Sarah Chun's research team conducted focus groups that included the demographic Prime Network was most worried about: white viewers in suburban and rural markets. The results contradicted decades of conventional wisdom. When presented with authentic, well-written content featuring dark-skinned black characters, these audiences responded positively. They connected with universal themes of workplace discrimination, family dynamics, and personal growth that transcended racial boundaries. More importantly, the research revealed that previous failures of shows featuring dark-skinned black leads had been caused by poor writing, inadequate marketing, and industry assumptions that became self-fulfilling prophecies. When networks expected dark-skinned actresses to fail, they provided fewer resources, less promotion, and weaker time slots, creating the very commercial failures they had predicted. Armed with this data, Amara made an unprecedented demand. She wanted final approval over casting, writing, and marketing decisions. She wanted promotional campaigns that celebrated her dark skin rather than minimizing it. Most importantly, she wanted a contract clause that prevented the network from altering her appearance through lighting, makeup, or digital manipulation. The negotiations attracted attention throughout the entertainment industry. Trade publications speculated about whether a major network would actually give creative control to a dark-skinned black actress who was demanding the right to remain authentically herself. Agents and managers debated whether Amara was being unrealistic or revolutionary. The answer came in April 2018, when Prime Network announced that Melanin Diaries would premiere that fall with a $5 million per episode budget. Amara as star and executive producer, and promotional campaigns that explicitly celebrated dark-skinned black beauty. The announcement made entertainment industry history and sent shockwaves through Hollywood's established practices. But even as contracts were signed and production began, INDUSTR why insiders predicted failure. A conventional wisdom remained that dark-skinned black actresses couldn't carry mainstream television success. Amara Williams was about to prove just how wrong that conventional wisdom had always been. The premiere of Melanin Diaries was scheduled for September 2018, and everything Amara had worked for everything she believed about representation, authenticity, and the commercial viability of dark-skinned black stories would be tested in front of millions of viewers. The premiere of Melanin Diaries on Prime Network drew 12.3 million viewers, making it the highest-rated drama debut of the television season and the most-watched series premiere in the network's history. But the numbers only told part of the story. The cultural impact was immediate and undeniable. Social media exploded with posts from dark-skinned black women who had never seen themselves represented as the romantic lead, the professional success story, and the complex protagonist of a major network television series. The hashtag Melanin Diaries representation trended for 3 days, with viewers sharing photos of themselves watching the show and expressing emotions that ranged from joy to relief to a sense of validation they had never experienced from mainstream media. Critics praised the show's authentic writing, Amara's compelling performance, and the breakthrough representation that challenged television's narrow beauty standards. The New York Times called it a seismic shift in television representation that proves audiences are hungry for authentic stories about experiences that have been marginalized for too long. Rolling Stone declared Amara Williams the actress who changed television forever. But the real vindication came in the ratings. Melanin Diaries not only maintained its audience throughout the first season, it grew. By the season finale, the show was averaging 15.8 million viewers and had become Prime Network's most profitable series, generating advertising revenue that exceeded all projections. The success triggered a fundamental shift in industry casting practices. Within 6 months of the show's premiere, 3 other networks had greenlit series starring dark-skinned black actresses. Streaming platforms began actively seeking content that centered previously marginalized experiences. Talent agencies started signing dark-skinned actresses they had previously dismissed as too niche for mainstream success. For Amara personally, the transformation was remarkable. In 2020, she signed a 5-year, $50 million overall deal with Prime Network, making her the highest-paid black actress in television history. The agreement gave her production company the resources to develop content for other underrepresented performers, creating opportunities for an entire generation of actresses who had faced the same barriers that nearly ended her career. The Amara Williams Foundation, established in 2019, provides grants and mentorship for dark-skinned actresses navigating the entertainment industry. The foundation's Authentic Beauty Scholarship Program has supported over 200 young performers, helping them develop their craft while maintaining their cultural identity and refusing to compromise their appearance for commercial viability. Perhaps most significantly, Melanin Diaries changed how the entertainment industry understood audience appeal and commercial viability. Market research firms began studying the show's success to understand how authentic representation could create deeper audience engagement than the diluted content that resulted from colorist casting practices. The ripple effects extended beyond television. Fashion magazines began featuring more dark-skinned models on covers. Cosmetics companies expanded their shade ranges to better serve darker skin tones. And advertising campaigns began celebrating the full spectrum of black beauty rather than privileging lighter skin. In 2023, Amara was invited to deliver the keynote address at the NAACP Image Awards, where she reflected on the journey from that devastating 2015 audition to her current position as one of television's most powerful figures. "They told me I was too dark for television," she said to thunderous applause. What they really meant was that they were too limited in their vision to see the beauty, complexity, and commercial viability of dark-skinned black women. They confused their own biases with audience preferences, their own limitations with market realities. The speech became one of the most watched moments in Image Awards history, but Amara's most powerful statement came in the form of the announcement that followed. Her production company was launching a new streaming platform dedicated to content created by and for underrepresented communities, with particular focus on stories that challenged colorist beauty standards across all racial and ethnic groups. Today, Melanin Diaries has run for 6 seasons and has been syndicated internationally, proving that authentic stories about dark-skinned black women have global appeal. The show has won 12 Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Drama Series and Outstanding Lead Actress for Amara's groundbreaking performance. But perhaps the most meaningful measure of the show's impact is visible in the next generation of performers. Young, dark-skinned black actresses now enter audition rooms with confidence that was impossible before Amara Williams proved that success doesn't require compromising your authentic self. The woman who was once told she was too dark for television has become the star who changed television forever, proving that the only thing too dark about the entertainment industry was its vision of what success could look like. Today, when we discuss representation in entertainment, we often focus on the number of black faces on screen, while overlooking the spectrum of blackness that those faces represent. Amara Williams' story forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that even within conversations about racial diversity, colorism creates hierarchies that privilege some black experiences while marginalizing others. The entertainment industry's bias toward lighter-skinned black performers reflects broader societal attitudes that equate proximity to whiteness with beauty, intelligence, and commercial viability. These assumptions don't just affect casting decisions, they shape how entire communities understand their own worth and potential. But Amara's success demonstrates the transformative power of authentic representation backed by strategic thinking and unwavering commitment to change. Her refusal to accept industry limitations didn't just advance her own career, it created opportunities for countless other performers who had been told they were too dark, too ethnic, or too specific for mainstream success. The changes in television representation since 2018 prove that audiences are far more open to diverse beauty standards than industry gatekeepers believed. The commercial success of authentic content featuring dark-skinned black women reveals that the barriers were never about audience preferences. They were about institutional biases that created self-fulfilling prophecies of failure. Most importantly, Amara's story reminds us that changing systems of oppression requires more than individual success. It requires using that success to create systemic transformation. Her foundation, her production company, and her platform have opened doors for hundreds of other performers while challenging the industry to expand its understanding of who can be a star. The next time you see a dark-skinned black woman in a leading role on television, remember the woman who was told she was too dark but refused to accept that limitation. Remember that representation isn't just about seeing faces that look like yours. It's about seeing the full spectrum of human experience valued, celebrated, and commercially supported. Excellence comes in every shade. Amara Williams proved that the industry just needed to learn how to recognize it.